Hey guys, Chill here. Welcome back to Premature. Let's continue off what we were doing before. We were connecting our front end to our back end, if you know what I mean. All right, but before we get into that, just a small little housekeeping thing here. Refactoring. We changed the name of our controller to Premature controller because it's going to be handling everything, not just the storage areas. But we didn't change the name of the stuff in the front end. So let me just quickly clean that up. We'll call this store the Premature store. So this will handle pretty much all the core stuff. And while we're at it, let's also add another store in here, the index, because I believe if you don't have this, Nuxt will give you a little warning in your console. So maybe empty one will just do fine. That'll be enough. Maybe not. Maybe we'll have to add some stuff in there. We'll see. But we have this. It's called Premature.ts now. So we should change this name to Premature module. Premature module. And I think all of this can be fine. You just don't like you don't think it's a real word, which is, that's fair, but shut up. All right, so now in here, we got to import from Premature, the Premature module. And then down here, Premature module is Premature module. And also, would you consider Premature module? Actually, this is going to be very annoying. Premature module. Good. So all of these things have to be replaced. So now we will just do find area module and replace with Premature module. Place all. Good. All right. Are you still add area? Okay, that's fine. That's cool. We're cool. All right. Maybe this is good enough. Maybe it isn't. There's only one way to find out. All right. No issues found. Let's go. I'm going to close this door here. Let's take a look at our app, and it still appears to be working. We'll just reload for good measure. Yes. And in here, state should be a method that returns an object in store Premature.ts. Okay, well, this didn't change. Putting the index in there did not change this. I might remove it if it's actually not doing anything. But I believe that there's an option that we can put in here to make that message go away. And I believe the option is state factory true. So instead of state being just some properties, state becomes a function that returns an object of the properties. If that makes sense to you. If it doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, nobody cares. I don't care. Do you care? You shouldn't. But what I do care about is, okay, yeah. Compile has worked and it's still working. And we lost that, that warning went away. Hot update. Okay, that seems fine. Yeah, warning went away, right? Beautify CSS. Yeah, this is fine. Okay, so good to know. What if I delete this? Let me just delete that. Yeah, it doesn't mind not having the index, but we did have to set state factory to true. And to be fair, this is in the documentation talking about things you should do for Nuxt. This was one of them. So, good. Let me just commit this quickly. Okay, so in the back end, we basically want now a function that's like add area, but for items. So I'm just going to copy paste and fix that up. So that'll look like this. And what's next? I guess in our store, which is now called Premature.ts. I'll have to get used to that, I guess. Yes. What do we have? So we have an add area mutation. We need an add item mutation like this. And do we have an add area? Yeah, so we want an add item action. Oh yeah, I guess we also have to put in here. Let's put this in here quick. We'll do items, add item. I gotta put that in the routes. All right, and back to copy pasta fixing up. All right, so here we have our action for add item. Now, unfortunately, we cannot incrementally, sort of test and commit this because the way our UI is set up, we don't just add items individually. An item is added as part of adding an instance if the item of that name does not yet exist. So we also need the add instance functionality to be hooked up before we can really test this. All right, now we need to do the stuff for adding an instance. Now, this is going to be a little tricky. I'm going to have to make a bit of a compromise here. So for the add area and add item mutations, it's very simple. I pass in an area object, and then that object gets pushed into the array. Very simple. We can't really do it like that with instances, right? Because the constructor of instance mutates the state. You know what I mean? Inside of this constructor here, let's take a look at it. Where is it? The item instance constructor, the final operation is to connect the entities, which hooks up those backlinks, if you recall. So we have to construct it inside of the mutation because you cannot mutate the state outside of the mutation. It will not be captured by the tools and you'll get warnings and it just sucks, right? So we have to construct the instance inside of here, which means we can't pass in a constructed object, which means we can't do this. And we also can't return a constructed object from our add instance function, which I don't like. And I might redesign it, but for the time being, we're just going to make a little bit of a compromise and we'll think about it. We'll think about how we feel and if we can find a super good solution. But for now, we'll just do what comes naturally. So we're going to create, this is not going to be add instance. This is going to be transfer instance, which is different because instead of, adding a pre-constructed instance, we are going to take in a transfer object, item instance transfer, and then we're going to hydrate it in the mutation. So first we have to find the area that this instance is, looking at. So we can do this .areas.find. So we look at the foreign key that is in the transfer object and we use that to find the existing area in our store. We do the same thing for items. Let's also do a little bit of a sanity check just to make sure that we were able to find both of those, things that have been referenced by the new instance. So we'll do a little bit of this, throw an exception if something untoward has happened. And then finally, we'll do item instance .hydrate based on the transfer object plus the area and the item that it'll be linking to. And there you have it. So this might be actually a little wasteful in that during our action, we'll probably know at least which area we have. So we wouldn't actually need to do this find if we already have that information. We could actually make it like an optional parameter in here. I might just make it an optional parameter. But for now, we'll just do it like this. That's fine. Okay, so now we need the action. I'll just copy and paste. It's going to be quite a bit different than adding an item or an area, but let's start off with this. We'll call it add item instance to area. Okay, so we're going to need more inputs. So we're going to need our load. Item name is a string and the area that we're targeting is the area. So we already have the area is what I was saying. We don't need to search for it up here, but you'll see why I'm doing it that way in a second. So what do we got here? Well, we have to change the empty item name blah already exists. Right, so we need to change this logic just a little bit. Let me show you how. So obviously this has to be, in the payload. Yeah, tried to add instance of item with empty name. That's no good. Now, we're going to search to see if an instance of this name already exists in the area. Because you don't want to add the same instance twice. You would just increase the quantity of the existing instance. So if you're trying to do that, we should throw an exception saying that that ain't cool. But okay, so now what do we do? What's the logic here? So there are two cases that we could run into. First case is that the item of that name already exists, and so we don't have to add the item, we just have to add the instance of that item in the area. So we have to search to see if that item already exists. Fair enough. So either this is going to point to item of the name that we want, or it's going to have the value of undefined. So we do if item is equal to null, which this is a double equals, not a triple equals, so that also will be true for undefined. If that is the truth, then we have to do item is equal to await this dot add item. So we're going to call from this action, we're going to invoke a different action. Actions invoking actions. That's composition, baby. Payload dot item name. So if the item does not pre-exist, we will have to first dispatch the action of adding the item. When that is done, then we can proceed. So we're going to do constant data is equal to await axios dot post. And what are we posting here? Well, we're going to post to instances. And the data, we're going to have a bunch of data here. So let me just put a new line up in this bad boy. All right, so we need the item ID, the ID of the item. That is going to be linked to the storage area, which is going to be payload.area.id. And we need the quantity. So actually, area and quantity. So this is annoying because I would like the quantity to have a default value, but I guess we can't do that. Maybe probably not able to do that, so we'll just leave it like this. That's fine. That is fine. Quantity is just going to be payload dot quantity. Okay, so this will be our endpoint. We haven't created it yet. We will create it. No fear. Have no fear. It will be done. Oh yes, she will be mine. And then this dot underscore transfer instance data dot instance. So this is the transfer object as in coming back from the API as item instance transfer. There you go. So we call the API, and then when we got that information back, we pass that information on to the mutation. And this is gonna do her up. Probably will be good, but we'll have to see. So we have to go back to the back end, and we got to add another bad boy in here. So let me do the copy pasta special, and we got to go instance. Yes. All right. Instance. So validation is going to be a little bit more involved here with instances because we've got more going on. We got 3 parameters coming in. So for the item ID, now we don't want to say unique in items, right? Because that's basically saying that this ID shouldn't exist in items. We want the opposite of that. We're saying that we're going to try to link an existing item to an existing area. So this ID has to exist in the database, otherwise we got a big problem. So let's validate with the exists rule. I believe it's called exists. Yes. So item ID should exist in table items in column ID. And the same should be for storage area ID. Finally, the quantity, it should be a number. And it should be at least 1, we're going to say. We won't allow adding an instance of 0, although we might want to allow that in the future. But for right now, let's say that you have to have at least 1 to add an instance to an area. All right, now this is okay, but we can tighten it up even more. We can add another rule, item ID, because basically for any given item storage area pair, we don't want there to be 2 instances of that pair, only 1. So how would we do that? Well, we got to get a little bit fancy. So we're going to say unique item instances. So in the table item instances, item ID should be unique. But if we just did this, that means that you could only ever have an item in a single area. You couldn't have an item in area A and the same item in area B, because that would violate this constraint. So we don't want the constraint to be just that item ID is unique, but there should be a uniqueness of the pair of item ID with storage area ID. So there's a little bit of magic in this rule. It's not even documented, but you can put a second condition in here. So there are a few parameters in here that we'll just ignore because we're not using them. Here, the second condition, storage area ID. This is the column. And here is a second value that you can use. And the value that we want to put in here is actually this value. So we are going to inject it into here with some string interpolation. Request pointer to storage area ID. All right. So now we can assert uniqueness of this combination of item ID and area ID. A little bit of high level laravel trickery going on here, but you can do it. You can do it in many other ways, but this is this will probably be the way that uses the least amount of typing. So that's the one I'm going to use. So now we've got our constraints in here, and they're all good, and they're all what we want. Now, because we're kind of doing a crazy rule in here, it's a little unorthodox. Let's also customize the error message for that. So item ID dot unique, the unique rule. The message for this one is going to be item area pairing already exists. So that will better reflect what's going on in here. Otherwise, it would just say, item ID already exists in item instances or whatever. But that's not the full story, because we also have this condition. So it's the pairing of item area that is pertinent to the situation. All right, so instance is equal to item instance create. So now we want to get an array that has the item ID, the storage area ID, and the quantity. So we can pull those out into an array very nicely with request only. And we want item ID, storage area ID, and quantity. So here you see that by naming in the request, by naming them the same as the name of the attributes in the model, we can just pull them out very cleanly like this. And Bob, as they say, as I'm wont to say, is your uncle. Like that. All right. So there is our backend. It likely works. Let's go into here. Let's go instances, add instance. There you go. Okay, so I would briefly like to test just the API on its own. The Pancho view. Let's do items first of all. And item name. Jar Jar. Send. Server error. Undefined variable item. Okay, well, this is why we test things, right? Item name jar jar view items post. Okay, so everything seems to be checking out on this end. Undefined. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, this is why you test. You don't test everything together. You test in as small parts as possible because you never know. There you go. Given data was involved. Yeah, so because we hit an error trying to assign here after we've already created it, it now exists in the database. So let's do jar jar 2. Send it. Good. Okay. All right. So that's working. Now let's try instances. So we're going to have to get fancy with it. So item ID. So I don't really know what combinations already exist, but let's try item ID 3 in storage area ID 1, quantity 333. All right, so if it already exists, if this pairing already exists, we should get an error on it. Given data, item area pairing already exists. So let's try item ID 4 in that area. Pairing already exists. Let's try item ID 5 in that area. There was an error parsing JSON data. Unexpected end of JSON input. All right, well, let's quickly do a get on the initial state here. Okay. So we have jar jar and jar jar 2. That's good. So we have storage area item ID. So 111314272843. All right. So what I'm getting at here. Well, I mean, we have item ID up to 10, so it's not like we specified something that doesn't exist. So what is the issue here? I mean, we should be able to do, because we have 1, 1, 1, 3, 1, 4. We should be able to do 1, 2. So let me go post to instances. Body item ID. So storage area ID. Let's put this here. Storage area ID 1, 2. Quantity 333. Quantity. But so if this doesn't even exist, it's a problem, but it shouldn't just shit the bed. It should give us a 422. So let's try this again. Quantity doesn't have a default value. Yeah, okay. So I think our rule here, we can make things better. Making this required. So maybe I should put required in all of these. I thought by making it integer, it would be required by default, but, you know, those vagaries of the rules, they sometimes change. Let's try this. All right, so now we get unprocessable entity. The quantity field is required. This is what we want. You know what I'm going to do here? Quickly, I'm going to make sure that all of these bad boys are required, because they are required, so they should be required, if you know what I'm saying. Good. So that's problem number 1, perhaps. Quantity. Let's try this. Okay, so now we get back the instance. That's good. If we try it again, it says that item area pairing already exists. What if we go back to what we had before? This. So this gave us some kind of weird error. Oh, now it says quantity field is required. Okay. So, yeah, this should be fine then, I guess. And there you go. There is the back end all nicely sorted. Now, by the way, what happens if we put in like an item ID that doesn't exist at all? Let's put in, you know, item ID 69. that doesn't exist in the database, and we get the selected item ID is invalid. The quantity field is required. Quantity. There you go. Beautiful. Okay. All right. So that's the back end all sorted. Little bump in the road, but you always expect a bump in the road, one or at least one here. Add item to item instance to area. That's there. Okay, let's test it out. And, inevitably we're going to run into errors, but hopefully we can fix them and everything will be good. So we go to add area, execute, add item dialog, add item, execute. Okay. So what's this going to look like? Well, I would like this to be error, not log. So we're going to invoke an action. So let's await this dot not area module dot Pantrio module dot add item instance to area, and we have the item name, we have the area, and we have the quantity. So let's do quickly copy paste this. We'll just rename that to area, and the quantity, we'll just default that to 1 here. Later on in the dialog, we might give the option of specifying a quantity. Seems like something that might be useful. But for right now, we just want to get this rolling. You know what I'm saying? Okay, just formatting. There. Okay. There we go. And I feel in my water, I feel like that is all we actually need to do. Because, encapsulation, we should only have to change things in one place instead of having to change them all over the place. All right, so I'm seeing errors here. Syntax error. Unexpected reserved word await. Okay, yeah, you got me. Thank you, TypeScript. You're always saving my life. So, for using await, we have to make this async. And if we make it async, it's going to return a promise, so we can't be returning void. All right. Fair enough. Touché. Oh, and it's loaded. All right, so it passed the first test. I didn't go blind. Let's see if I can add an item here. So, intelligent linen lamp. Huzzah! And it is in there. And if we go to intelligent linen lamp, we see GFHDJ is in the house. I love it. You love to see it. All right. So, I believe that, as they say, is that. And one last thing to wrap up this video here. Let's sexify our code just a wee little bit. 2 items of sexification. First, sexification. Let's replace all this logic here, which is basically duplicate of this logic here, with just a simple call to this dot underscore transfer instance inst xf. And there you go, Bob's your uncle. No more duplication of logic. You love to see it. And now you see why I put this searching in here, because I wanted to call it from here, and from this point we do not already have references to the area and the item, but from here we do have references. So let's see if there's anything we can do about that. But first, let's just test, make sure this is working. It seems to be working. No, bad index in transfer item instance number 1. All right, what is this happy crappy? I understand. I understand, my friends. So this transfer instance is searching through the areas and the items in our state, but we do not set those until after this point. So what we should do is we should call replace areas before we do this for each. And you know what? We don't even really need to have this separate variable here. We'll just call replace areas, replace items. We'll pass them this stuff directly. Like this, keep the code nice and short and sweet. Look at how beautiful this is becoming. You love to see it. Let's go back here. Let's refresh. And we are loading. So that's good. Let's quickly do a little commit. All right, last little thing before we wrap it up for today. Transfer instance here. It's doing this searching, but that's a little redundant when we're calling from this point because we already have the area and we already have the item. So we don't really want to do that searching twice. I mean, it's not the end of the world if we do it, but if we can do something better, why not do something better? Now, mutations, unfortunately, they can only take one parameter, like actions. It's a little bit of a limitation from Vuex. So let's do payload. This is gonna be a bit of a freaky one here, I think. We'll see. Payload's type is going to be, well, we want the transfer object. So XF is item instance transfer. Now we also want an optional thing in here that has the area and the item. So we're going to call that thing hint, and the data type of the hint is going to be an object that has area, which is an area, and item, which is an item. Okay. Now hint might also be null. So that or null. All right. Now we have to put in the payload dot, unfortunately. Instead of null, let's do undefined. That means we don't even have to define it on the payload object. It's possible that we can just omit it completely, and that'll make our code from the calling end a little more concise. But yeah, so we do this. Now we have to test to see if hint exists. If payload.hint is equal to null, we want to do this. All right, yeah, const means that these guys will be out of scope. So we should do let area, which is of type area, and let item, which is of type item. And then we can get rid of these guys. Area is equal to defined. Why are you angry? Because it could be undefined. That is fair. That is very fair. I wonder if TypeScript is going to be smart enough to pick up what I'm putting down here. Area is equal to this. Item is equal to this. Why are you angry? A is not a... Yeah, okay. So if payload hint is equal to null, we do this. We do a little sanity check. Else. If not, then area is equal to payload.hint.area, and item is equal to payload.hint.item. And this is beautiful because TypeScript actually can statically analyze all this logic and realize that at this point, area and item will be guaranteed to not be undefined. And so we don't have to put any assertion or anything in here. It's beautiful. Okay, so now if we provide a hint, it will use the hint. If we don't provide a hint, it will look up. That's what we want. Okay, so now our other points of action, instead of passing in this instance xf, we're going to pass in an object xf is inst.xf. Apparently it's not liking the optionality of this. So how do I specify that this thing might not exist? Google is telling me if I put a question mark here, that should work. Now, if I do this, so the question mark also implies that this can be undefined, so we don't need that then, and now this works. So the payload is just xf. Now down here, payload is going to be xf, which is data.instance. Does it work? Yeah, it works. We don't have to put the as in there. I was just being cute. And the other thing, the hint. So let's add a hint. And the hint is going to be item is item. And area is payload.area. And there you go. So now we're calling it with the hint, and it won't do that useless lookup again. Again, this kind of optimization is probably not going to be necessary. I don't believe that the thing that we're optimizing here is a performance bottleneck, but I just wanted to do it just to show you that you could do it. I just felt like something I wanted to do. Now the question is it going to actually work? That's the other thing. So we go back here. We're going to reload. So the initial loading part is working. Now, if we add a new item here, but stuff, does it work? It does work. Okay, so we got the new item here. Yes. All right. So there you go. There's your little your premature optimization for the day. Now the only sticking point, the only thing that remains here that I might want to address in the future is for add area and for add item, we return the item or the area that has been added, which could be useful. But here we're not returning that because it's actually created in the mutation, and the mutation is not allowed to return a value. So I mean, there are ways we could get around that if we really want to. But for right now, I'm just going to say, we won't worry about it. And if it becomes an issue, or if I get a good idea, just, out of the blue, then we'll come back and we'll refactor. But for now, this is going to be good enough. So we have the ability to add areas. We have the ability to add items to an area, new items and item instances. Last thing, we're going to wire up the back end to be able to change these quantities. And there's gonna be a little bit of interesting stuff in there, so it should be a fun little trip. And until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click the like button. Helps a lot, and I will see you soon with some more Pantrio.